Welcome to For the Love of Books, Bees Books Edition, a podcast by North Lanarkshire Libraries.
Hello, this is Pari.
And this is Jenny, and we're here to talk about
Bees Books. Well, I am here to talk. I don't know if what I talk will make sense. Mm-hmm. I've had a very lively book bug session today. Mm-hmm. Lots of crying babies.
Oh.
Lots of climb bee babies. Mm-hmm. Lots of energetic babies.
And all together.
That's
something.
I had the great idea of handing out musical instruments, which is fine.
Normally.
If there's one or two babies.
Yes.
Not if there is all these energetic babies. So all my energy has gone.
Okay,
it's all in
fine.
the babies. Mm-hmm. Good luck to their parents.
Yes.
So and good luck to you.
Okay, thank you. I should also have a wee warning that I'm a bit cotton woolly today, if that makes sense.
Yes, like your brain or your...
Just in general, cotton woolly, yes. I feel as if every episode we kind of give everybody warnings.
This is what life is like as an adult.
Yes,
what do we do?
Exactly. We can't be 100% all the time.
Or ever, apparently. We get one good day a month, I think.
Right, okay, we'll take that.
Never when we're recording an episode.
No, or when we want it.
Yeah. It's just like a random time when we have to do chores.
Yeah.
Anyway,
yes.
The theme that Bee's given us to talk about today is the natural world, I think.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is the natural world. So what are your feelings on the natural world, just in general?
Well, we were talking about bees earlier, and you know, I do like bees, and I was reading something the other day about they like, you know, like lots and lots of plants and things like that. They keep the world moving, get pollinated by bees, and you think this tiny creature is in charge of quite a lot of, you know, there's a lot of responsibility there.
Yeah.
But that's all I have to say. Sorry about the natural world. You threw that at me there and I wasn't prepared for it.
I love keeping you on your toes, especially when you're cotton woolly.
Yes.
I think I have, I think I grew up in a city and I didn't really have any connection to the natural world. So I feel like now, like in my 20s and 30s, especially since I moved here, is when I'm getting to know the natural world a bit. I did travel in India and like forests and things, but more so now, and so far I like it. This is
it's funny you say that, because I grew up, you know, more out in the country kind of a thing. So maybe that's the thing, maybe like because I'm used to it as such.
You take it for granted.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yes, for me everything like feels quite magical. Yes. Like even so I live in the city still now, but a much smaller city and a much greener city. And we have like a shared back garden behind our flats. And sometimes there'll be like a fox that comes and bunnies and squirrels, and like I feel like that's a really like everyday connection to the natural world, which is quite lovely. And then of course I go to like parks and woodlands and things. I haven't done an adventure in the wilderness. Maybe I will.
Oh.
Maybe that's what my 40s are for.
I must admit, the first time I seen an actual woodpecker in a tree, like in my garden, an actual woodpecker.
Did you?
That was quite exciting. Yeah. And we've had hedgehogs and things like that. So,
wow. I must say, so Mumbai, where I'm from, we have a national park right like neighbouring to us, and as the city's grown, it's kind of encroached a bit on the national park. So sometimes people see leopards in their back garden.
Okay, that's totally trumped anything that I can come up with.
I'm so sorry. I knew like when you were saying that, that's what made me think. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry, Jenny. In my head, I was like, I have like something. Didn't mean to.
Leopard. Okay.
But I have never met a leopard apart from like the safari park in like the national park. So I've not seen one in my back garden. So you still, in our exchange, you still.
I'm not sure how I would react to find, you know, you see these clips of people and they've got like bears in their garden and stuff looking in their bins. I'm not quite sure how I would react to that.
No.
Well, I know how I would react. I would stay inside.
Lock the door.
Yes, and probably not film it because I would still be terrified. But
yeah. So, good, bad?
Yes.
We don't know.
No, exactly.
Yeah. Well,
anyway, I think we should move on to our books. And I'm interested to see, because I can see at the corner of my eye, they're both a kind of greeny colour.
Yes. So I actually didn't pick up either of these books to specifically fit into the theme. But as I was reading both, well, one and now I'm still reading the other, I was like, this fits perfectly. So that's I like that kind of coincidence. So the first one is all green, and it's called Not for the Faint of Heart by Lex Croucher.
Oh.
And this is a genre which I think maybe Lex Croucher writes in, because I've read another one of their books before, and it is like historical fan fiction rom-com.
Okay, that's a lot to unpack right there.
Yes, because this one is who's this? Robin Hood. So Robin Hood's granddaughter and a random like a sort of healer who they've kidnapped for complicated reasons, but she's like quite cheerful kidnapping. She gets in with the merry men, and they live in the green woods. They're like in the forest, in the natural world, and the whole thing is, and they're still at war with the Sheriff of Nottingham's grandson and son and things like that. And it's obviously she just wanted to write like a romp of a story, Lex Croucher, and it's not, so it's young adult and it's rom-com-y, which both are not my general things that I would pick up to read. I like to watch a good rom-com, but I don't read one. But I love this book. There's another book I read of hers before, Gwen and Art Are Not in Love, and that's Guinevere and Arthur, but not the original. This is like medieval time, so don't go for it to it for historical accuracy.
Right, okay.
But yeah, so lots of greenery. The humans live with and in and under trees. They have a huge vast kingdom underneath the trees with pubs and rooms and things, and it's really fun and really funny.
I think back in the day, like the whole of Britain was pretty much a big forest.
Yeah. So so the merry men, which is not just men, that's like a huge like sort of like group, and they live really closely because they're quite nomadic. So they keep sort of moving about, but they've grown so close to like the trees and the forests, and so they like live really closely to each other in a way that I have never. And she hasn't either. Like I don't remember any of their names.
No, that's fine. I never remember anybody's names.
So what's her name? Robin Hood's granddaughter. She's like the stern sort of like job kind of thing. And this healer, she's very like like I love this, beautiful and all, and it's nice, sort of the rom-com kind of element there, like Grumpy Sunshine is quite nice, but it's also really funny, and also tragedy strikes in the end, which I was not prepared for, and I felt a bit betrayed by, but then it gets nice at the end again. So it has a bit of everything, I think. Natural world, death, love, comedy.
And it's a junior young adult, a teenage book.
It is, yeah. So, like I said, I'm not usually a young adult kind of fan. I mean, it's fine, but I never usually tend to like really like or love them. But this, it's written with a lot. Like, I think it's written so the language is very modern. So it's not trying to ape that old-timey language. And I liked it. Like, I recognized it, especially like it's very online modern, but not in a bad way. Like in terms of the references and the memes, like if you don't know them, it doesn't matter. If this is the first time you're encountering it, you'll be like, oh, that's so funny. But I knew some of them. I'm sure I missed a lot, and I was like, oh, they've like put a modern spin on like this old-timey historical fiction rom-com, and it was just really fun. Yeah, historical fan fiction, sorry. Yes. So really fun. Yeah.
Excellent. And it definitely fits in with the natural world if they're in
it does, yes, because they grow, like, I mean, yeah, it's mostly horses that they're into, but they live in the forest, and Greenwood, as it's called, not Sherwood for some reason, but not Nottingham. What is that? The forest.
Sherwood. Yeah.
So they call it the Greenwood, and they're like in love with the forest.
I quite like the idea though that it's like a couple of generations down from the story that people are maybe familiar with.
Yeah. So because in the book as well, like Robin Hood and his like the original merry men have like this myth. They're like legend, and like even though people have met them or like older people know, like have like encountered them, it's changed a little, the merry men structure, and now people are not super like keen on where the direction that the current organization is going. It's become an organization,
right? Okay.
And so they're not as helpful, and they're not as trustful. So there's a lot of things going on in the background. So even though I sold it as this light-hearted tale with death, there's a lot more intrigue going on that you don't know, and because we enter the character through this healer's thing, so it's like dual perspective. It's the healer and this merry woman I guess, and there's a bunch of like other, so in her team there's like a few other characters, and they're all fun in different ways. Some of them are really grumpy and some of them are really good at killing, and because they have to be. So
do they still steal from the rich and give to the poor? You said they're going a different direction.
They are. I mean, I think they're now more focused on territory.
Oh, right.
Like,
okay.
yeah, so like maintaining territory, getting territory, and they've lost their way a little bit. But in this, they're sort of trying to, well, this group is trying to like find their way back a little bit, because a lot of them got into the Merrymen, the band, because they wanted to help the needy and the poor and like strike out against the rich and the, you know, like revolution and stuff, and the internal politics has gotten into the way of it a little bit. So throughout the book, it's a journey towards like looking at the outer world and not just the inner world. So it's actually really fun. I've sold it to myself all over again. So it's not just rom-com, it's...
No. I remember you talking about Gwen and Arthur before.
Oh, yes,
which did sound good, and then immediately forgot about it, obviously. It's the way these things are.
Yeah.
And is this a new book by the author? Is this
yes.
new?
Yes. So I'm really hoping she writes more in this kind of genre, because she's just having fun with it. So like, I think in the beginning she warns that, look, if you're coming here for historical accuracy, I have potatoes. I know there were no potatoes at that time. She's just writing like for a good time, and you can tell that. So when you're reading that, I mean, there are serious things happening, but it doesn't take itself seriously. It's like really lighthearted and fun, and then people die.
Yeah, okay. It sounds as if, you know, she's enjoyed, as you say, what she's writing.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes when authors do that, it definitely comes across.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if there's some historical inaccuracies, if you know what I mean.
I think for some people it might, like those people who, because I know there are some people who will read things and be like, oh, this was, remember you were reading a book and you were like, oh, there shouldn't have been cobblestones here, and then it turned out to be a whole book. That turned out to be a clue. Whereas other people take it much more seriously, like if this is, takes them out of the story. But here I think she does a good job of like setting you up for that right in the beginning, because then you're prepared. Like, I didn't know there were no potatoes.
No, neither did I. I was slightly puzzled when you said that. I thought potatoes
like, I don't really
were forever,
care.
if you know what I mean. Like cavemen had potatoes, who knew?
Well, apparently not. Robin and his Merrymen. So yeah, but it just like, I think this is such a good light-hearted read, and then you cry a bit. And
okay, you keep saying this.
It's 90% good fun, 10% trauma.
Okay. Does it? But it ends all right. Okay, you can't see your face, people, but I'm not convinced at all.
What about your book?
Yes, change the subject, Pari. So everybody knows what I'm going to talk about, because I mentioned it in the last of the thing. So it is the Cinderspire series by Jim Butcher. So I had the first book with me last time. I want to show you the cover of the second book.
Oh my god, it's bigger.
Yes.
Oh wow.
How pretty is this?
That's stunning.
Yes, and the same publisher has done a re-thing of the first book.
Yeah, because it's very different aesthetics.
It was. It is very much so. And it wasn't till I was re-looking at this morning that I realised, you can see there's this like crown in the back of this.
So this one's the Olympian Affair. Is that the second in the series?
So the first one is the Aeronaut Swindless.
Okay.
And the second one is the Olympian Affair, and they're both in the Cinderspire series. It's quite hard to say quickly, several times in a row. But I just want to say how much I enjoyed them. They're the most enjoyable book I've read for a long time. So I'm now going to tell you why. So, as I mentioned last time, one of the characters is a cat.
Yes.
An actual cat. And some people who live in these Cinderspires speak cat. Cats don't speak human, but they do understand human. Yes, Jim Butcher, the author, obviously has cats and knows cats because he writes them very, very well. And I chuckled a lot of times when I read it. And I have marked some pages, which I'll read out in a wee moment. And I have bought my glasses this time, so yay. Nice. But I want to give you just like the kind of premise of the story. So there is a planet, just a planet, and the surface of the planet is uninhabitable, which again is hard to say, which is how I've also kind of fitted it into the natural world, because there are creatures, there are bad things down there, and it's not kind of said in so many words, but it seems to be sometime in history the master builders have built these spires. So they're about 2 miles high and 2 miles across, and there's quite a few on the planet, and people live on them. That's where they live. And Jim Butcher, he does it very, very well, because if you read this book, you will see a completely different planet than I do.
Yeah.
It's a book where you use your imagination without realising you're using your imagination.
Yeah.
So there's nothing like 100% familiar in it. So it's not like, you know, a boarding school, you've got an idea what a boarding school is, or, you know, anything like that. It's like a completely different world he's built. It's slightly steampunky, without being steampunky. But again, your imagination might take you slightly somewhere different, if that makes sense. So we've got these big spires, and as human nature is, they have like, not wars as such, but you know, some of them have better facilities than others. You know, some are kind of, you know, poorer than others. And basically through the 2 books, a war starts between one of the spires and another one.
Oh, right.
And then it looks as if it's going to kind of spread out further. And I'm not trying not to give too much away, especially because I've read both of them now. I don't want to amalgamate them. But the great thing about them is there are ships. So in my head, to begin with, it was like Enterprise, you know, kind of starships, because they're out in the thing. But they're not. They're more like kind of Napoleon ships, you know, these kind of big ones with masts and sails, you know, that kind of era where they're, you know, proper, they've got cannon and all that kind of stuff. It's those kind of ships in the air, and they're kind of powered by ether. And it's a whole new way of looking at things. So you're looking slightly puzzled. I'm worried I'm not explaining this.
No, you are, because like even the sort of the cover of the first one and Aeronaut, in my head, I think of pirates, like sky pirates.
That's exactly what it is. If you imagine a pirate ship, I should have maybe said that.
So no, that's what exactly that you described it as. That's what it feels like.
But like the leaders of the spires have their armadas, you know, so they have like their navy, but it's a space navy.
Yeah.
But yes, so it's more like a kind of pirate ship, but this kind of ether, this kind of energy that they use to power it means that it floats in space. And it's just a wonderful concept. It's so completely different.
Yeah.
And I just absolutely love them, and I'm really hoping he's going to write more.
Right. Did these work? Do they work as standalones as well?
No. Well, the first one you could probably, but you'd be wanting more.
Right.
So yes, there's definitely at least a trilogy there.
Yeah.
Because the characters develop. In the second one, you're introduced to kind of a couple of more characters that you definitely want to know more about. There are also, and I don't want to say wizards because they're not wizards, but they can use this ether energy for reasons. So like a mixture between a wizard and a Jedi, I suppose. You know, it's kind of not the Force, it's not magic.
So it's like science fantasy a bit?
Yes, Oh, it's definitely science fantasy.
Right.
I should have said that right at the beginning, sorry.
No. But like, that's interesting. It's like a bit like Doctor Who, right? It's not like straight up science fiction, even though the tiny, like the time travel and stuff. But they also do things that you can't, like, it feels like a bit more magical.
Yes, yeah, it's magic without being magic, if you see what I mean. So I can't even remember what they're called now, these wizard Jedi things.
Space wizards.
Yes. But they're wonderful characters, and obviously, again, you know, there are people that use things for good, and there's people that use things for bad, and their own kind of things that they want to do. There are massive giant creatures that live in the atmosphere, which these ships have to kind of try and avoid and things like that. At one point we do go down to the surface, and we kind of meet some of the creatures that live down there as well. Right.
It feels a bit Dune-y.
It's that kind of thing where there's nothing else I would say that's quite like it that I've
Right.
read. Like June, you know, there's maybe small elements that
Yeah.
you would notice from something else, but it's
Yeah.
a very much, in my opinion, first of its kind of a thing. And just Jim Butcher just builds the world so well that, as I say, mine will be slightly different than yours because you are using your imagination,
Yeah.
but you're not left to use it if you don't want to, if that makes sense.
And I suppose like it'll give you enough, at least from what you're describing, that you're picking up from reference points that you have, which may be different from your context.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But it's just wonderful. But my favourite character is the cat,
Of course.
Raoul.
Yeah.
And he...
You do remember the cat.
Yes,
You
I
never
do.
remember the
No,
human.
exactly. I do remember his human as well.
Yeah.
So his human is called Bridget, but her cat name is, I'm sure, Little Mouse. So cats give names to humans, you know, when they like them, or even when they don't like them, you know, they kind of give names. So her father is in charge of, so because they're way up in the air, they have to use resources differently than how we would think about it. So there are crews that go down to the surface and chop down trees and things for wood, but it's a very dangerous job. So it's not like going into Nottingham Forest.
Yeah.
You know, it's...
I mean, it's
Well,
not that safe.
No,
either.
exactly.
Yeah.
But they have to put up with all these different teachers that kind of dive bomb them and kill them and rip their heads
Oh
off and
wow!
things like that.
Oh
Yeah.
no, it's
No.
not that unsafe. Yeah.
So, you know, and to build these ships, they need the wood kind of a thing. But on the spires themselves, there's different kind of... It's a little bit... There's kind of guilds and things like that, which we are fairly familiar with,
Yeah.
from Terry Pratchett and things like that. And they all have their own kind of thing that they do.
Yeah.
And her father's in charge of meat. It seems to be that he's kind of in charge of feeding or getting the right meat to people. So she's quite a burly kind of character, because she's kind of grown up throwing, you know, half a cow over her shoulder and moving it around.
As you do.
Yes. But the cats know her father as, it's something like the opposite of Oathbreaker, word keeper, something like that. So, you know, they know him as somebody who will say, you know, give them his word to do something and he will do it. And then Raoul has kind of, I suppose, adopted Bridget as his own human. But he's just a wonderful character. He's just so cattish. And you have, you know cats, how proud they can be.
Yeah.
But can you imagine if they could tell you that?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, that kind of very standoffish kind of way, but at the same time very much wanting you to clap them and when it suits them. That's very much how these cats are. So they live in the spire and they have their own territories, a bit like, you know, your characters, and sometimes they kind of, you know, fight for a wee bit more territory or whatever, and they are tolerated by some humans because they keep like the air ducts and the tunnels and things like that clear of bad things, who want to get into the spire and kind of kill people.
Yeah.
So, you know, one cat might not be able to do a lot of damage, but a clan of cats, you know, could very much. They also have these kind of spurs that they can put on their back legs. So cats' back legs, like any kind of wild cat, are very strong. You know, tigers and lions and things like that, you know, they use their back legs. So they've had these spurs that the humans can put on them and they can like make even more damage.
Wow.
They don't particularly like wearing them, but they know that they're useful.
Yeah, I want to see this cat clan world. Like, I just want to see it on screen.
Yes.
I want it to be real, but I don't know if I want things wanting to kill us to
Well,
be real.
no, that bit's quite scary. But the cats are just, you know, they have these clans and they're just wonderful. And in the second book, something happens to one of the other spires. I won't give too much away, but the cats remain, and they're taken to the main spire that this is about. And basically they want a bit of territory, to give up their secrets that they know what happened to their spire. They want territory in this new one. So
so there's like human stuff going on, and then there's cat stuff going on.
But there's a lot of crossover. But I'm just going to very quickly read just a couple of things out. This is from the second book.
Yeah.
And I'm going to put my glasses on.
So while you ready yourself, is the do you read from the perspective of both the cats and the humans? Or?
Yes. So most of the time you're reading from the humans, but occasionally you will. There are a couple of half chapters where Raoul's kind of on one of the ships and climbs the masts, because that's what cats do. There's a big tall wooden thing, I must climb that. The good thing is he gets to the top, has a wee look around, and then gets himself back down again. No sailors have to go and rescue him or anything like that. So one of the bits that really made me laugh was that you don't need to know who the characters are, but Vincent leaves the room. He departed from the room haltingly. Cats being cats, there are at least 2 or 3 in the immediate path of Vincent's feet at any given time.
Mm-hmm.
That made me laugh, because that's exactly what cats do.
That is,
they just in your way the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the other bit. Long Thinker is the cat name for the leader of the Spire. The Spire Arch is what he's called. So he's Long Thinker. So the cats have been used to him kind of planning ahead. So this is why they've given him this name. Raoul says, why have they not given me a ship? I want a ship to take me where I'm going. And Bridget says, well, ships are very expensive. Raoul says, well, I'm a prince. It would be appropriate to my station. And Bridget, who obviously very used to the cats by now, and is used to kind of talking them round and making it as if it's their idea. She says, perhaps it's my fault. And Raoul says, yes, it would explain much. You mean well, but you often have no idea what is happening. And Bridget just kind of says, very true, yes. Just to kind of keep the peace. And then at one point, Bridget says, I know that your view of humans and mine are very different, and they should be. And Raoul says, humans are not aware enough to truly understand a cat's perspective. Most of us do not consider your poor sight, hearing and smell to be your own fault. He just humans are there to be tolerated, but but at the same time, he often goes in for a kind of nose nudge and wants clapped and purred. It's just a wonderful, wonderful character. And I like in the second book that more cats are kind of there, and there's kind of wee arguments and stuff.
Yeah.
And Bridget's, Raoul's human Bridget, and the human that the other cats kind of adopt, kind of like each other. And the cats...
Romance.
Yes, but the cats discuss it in a very cat way. As in, I think they're going to mate now, we will leave the room, and things like that. It's very funny, it's very clever.
Aww.
But the other characters, the human characters, are wonderful as well. So we've got
That's true, I know
No, sorry.
about who are these humans.
So we've got Captain Grimm, who is a kind of disgraced naval officer or armada officer, who's now out on his own, kind of doing deliveries and things like that. So we definitely want to know why he's been disgraced and all this kind of stuff. We've got one of the rich families who live on the Spires. A daughter has decided to kind of be a cadet for a while, going against her mother's wishes, although that's what the mother wants, but the mother obviously treats her daughter a bit like you need to treat the cats.
Yes, I was going to say.
Yes. And then we've got Bridget, who's kind of the last of her line, and her father kind of wants her to do what is expected of the family, even though really he needs her to stay and help with the family business. We've got there's also characters who are cat-ish, but they're human, so they have a special name which I've obviously forgotten, but they are kind of superhuman. So they look human apart from maybe the eyes are kind of cattish, but they're stronger, they're faster, they don't think exactly like humans but not quite like cats. So they're kind of don't have the same feelings as we would have, or the same kind of empathy that perhaps humans would have. Warrior born, that's what they're called, warrior born.
Right.
So they are kind of the warriors, and obviously there's a whole thing there about them and how they're seen in society and all that kind of a stuff.
Yeah, so this is like a proper sort of chunk of a series, like
Yes.
because they're like good, you know, like the. So yeah, when you think of like an SFF series and the books, it's like the whole world building, the different factions, the different things that are going on. That's difficult to like explain, but once you
Absolutely.
read,
I think the first book kind of gets you into it and then you're hooked. I think he definitely really quickly needs to write like another one. But I just adore the whole world. You know, it's they fight with swords and they've got cannon and they've got things like that, but they've also got these ether weapons, like which are kind of like gauntlets and there's crystals in their hand and they kind of fire out like shots and things. There's a whole kind of not quite magic stuff happening in the background. It's just wonderful and I could go on forever. But I see that you have another book that you would like to talk about.
I do, but I haven't. I've only finished half of it. As you can see, the bookmark is exactly
half.
So this book is actually, so this February is, as you know, is one of my project months. Well, I've started projects from like last month, one off. But basically in February, I'm going to try and not read any library books at all because I tend to read, because I have access to 4 libraries. I just tend to read a lot of library books and the books on my shelf languish. So in February, I'm only going to read books that I own. But luckily, this book that I have, we also have in the library. And it's called This Poison Heart. It's by
love the cover.
Kaylin Barron. And it's also a young adult. Which, to young adult, who am I? Who is she?
I do not read young adult, and here I have 2.
And isn't this a beautiful cover?
Beautiful.
So as you can see, so the cover is this girl in glasses and she has lots of flowers around her and some pokey vines and trees in the back. Yeah, just a lot of, just like a lot of wilderness, so like the natural world. So she lives with her parents in Brooklyn. But even when we start reading about it, she already knows that she has these weird powers. Yeah, so it's fantasy. But I don't quite know in what direction it's going to go. So I'll just like lay out what I've discovered so far. Is that she can control plants and like plants seem to love her. Her parents own a flower shop, but because she lives in the city, she's really scared of hurting people. Once she tried to grow flowers like for the shop in like the back garden and it ended up taking out a wall because it got too enthusiastic. Whenever she walks past like dying flowers or dying trees, they like burst into like greenery and like things. So she has to control, like if she even glances towards a tree, the tree will be like, oh, like a puppy, like, oh yes, you're paying attention to me, I'm gonna like grow towards you or like burst into bloom and stuff. So she's really like, she's having a difficult time because she's stressed all the time. Like when she's in school, like she has to be really careful to sort of block out all the green stuff, all the natural, like the plants and trees and things. But now it's the summer vacation, and when we've entered her world, she's sort of discovering that she seems to be immune to poison as well, like poisonous plants that should have like harmed her or killed her, even something like poison ivy, but also stuff that could have killed her. It doesn't seem to affect her at all, and we don't know why until like a few chapters in. She's left, so she's like the adopted child of these 2 parents. And she gets like a lawyer shows up at their door and says that your birth mother has left you an estate, and it's sort of in the country a little bit and like outside New York, but you can like have like, you know, I mean, she's left it all to you. So, and she's a bit like, who is this rando? Like, I've never met my birth mother, but they're having trouble with like rising rents in New York and stuff. So this seems like a gift, like, you know, like a really like a dream come true. But they're still not super sure because out in the country, more nature.
I was just going to say that's probably not where she needs to be.
Yeah, but this one has like 40 acres of nature. So this is like an estate. And it's sort of shut off from their neighbors. So when they move in, they've just gone over there to check it out to see if they want to uproot their lives and like, you know, move here. but they realize that she actually has a chance to explore a little bit more and to not be on guard all the time. And she finds that the more she loosens up, the more her powers sort of develop and bloom a little bit.
Do her parents know about it?
Yes, her
Right.
parents know. So they are the ones, like her parents know. And I found that really like nice as well, because usually when you read children's books or young adult books, or even like it's a secret from
Yeah.
everybody, and it is a secret from all her like friends and stuff, but not from her parents. Her parents know, and they're really trying to be really protective of her, but they don't know either what's going on, because this is obviously something she's inherited from her birth mother or they don't even know actually. They don't know what's going on. What we discover is this is something she inherited from her birth mother, and her birth mother's name is Celine, and she died like a long time ago. But Celine's sister is Cersei, and she's the one who died recently and left this estate because there's nobody else to leave it to. And then when she goes in, she finds these portraits of like this witch, or not witch, this woman called Medea, who is from Greek mythology, a witch. And she finds all like these clues and stuff. So what I think is like, it's like, and her name is Briseis. I don't know how you say it, but apparently it's also a character from Greek mythology, which I don't know anything about. So you know her.
Yeah.
Brie is what I'm going to call her.
No, that's fine.
I don't know how
That's
to
probably what I
pronounce
would
it.
call her when I would be reading it.
So it seems to be like a mythological retelling almost. And so when they go to this house, it's like this gorgeous giant house, but they also find like gardens there, in which one like walled off section of the garden that she finds by herself, because she's been left letters as well from her aunt, and the aunt says, don't tell anybody about this, because like you'll get into trouble. And she's like, I don't understand what's going on. And then strange people show up at their door. And then they discover that the house has an apothecary, and there used to be an apothecary in it like 10 years ago when these people used to be there. And the village seems a bit sus as well, like the town that they've moved to, because they all seem to know some stuff, but we don't know how much stuff. It's very intriguing. But it's also randomly really funny.
Okay.
So
I was expecting that.
Me neither, because when it starts and the tone of it feels so dark, right? Like it feels like brooding, intriguing. But her mothers, they're really funny. They'll just like, there's sort of such an interesting sort of dynamic between them. Like they like obviously are our age, the parents, and she's a teenager, and like the way they talk to each other and make fun of each other affectionately, it can be like really funny. And so there is that's really like interesting. I find the balance between darkness and lightness. So sometimes it'd be like, oh my god, what is this guy? And then the next page, like they're doing something like really silly and ridiculous. So I'm really enjoying it. Again, another young adult, and there's a second book in this series as well, apparently, which I also have on my shelf. So I'm really looking forward to finding out what's going to happen, because I have no idea. So the clues are plants, poison, and Greek mythology, and this character that I don't know anything about, and witchcraft.
Ooh.
Yep. So
I'm hoping for you that it's not like your other book that's 90% good and 10% death.
in its defense, it says not for the faint of
No,
heart.
that's true.
But also it does end nicely. I was just trying to be like, I was just trying to add drama. It ends like in a way that's you feel good about.
Okay.
So
good.
the 10% trauma is not how it ends.
Okay,
So
that's fine.
yes.
That's fine.
But yes, so I tentatively recommend The Poison Heart, because it's like, again, I think I have this preconceived notions of young adult books, because some young adult books are a bit samey, and not in a bad way, like that's what people like for comfort or whatever, but they've never really spoken to me as much as like middle grade books or like adult fantasy. But this seems to have that balance of the sort of silliness of children's books and the seriousness of fantasy books, like adult fantasy. So I'm really enjoying it.
Well, hopefully next time you will have finished it and you can let us know if you've immediately started reading book 2 or whether it's not.
Or whether I'm like, it took a very negative turn in the second
Because you're
half.
only halfway through.
That's true. So I'm only tentatively recommended, subject to terms and conditions.
Well, I have another quick book that I'd like
Yes.
to talk about, if that's all right.
Of course.
Although the other two books, they were separate.
Oh.
So I have a book called Drawn Onward I'll ask you to read the authors because I don't know.
Daniel Nairi, and the pictures are by Matt Rockefeller.
None of which I know. They're not
But
familiar to
this
me.
book seems really familiar to me.
It's beautiful. I mean, it is beautiful. And the reason I kind of chose it was because it's very much set. So basically,
And it's new.
Yes. So a wee boy, basically his mum's passed away, and his dad, is trying to cope. And basically, wee boy has a question: Mum, were you glad you were my mum? Which makes me well up immediately.
Oh no, I was not prepared for this.
It's one of these books where there is not a lot of words, and I have to say that the whole book is written. I can't remember what it tells you.
It's stunning.
It is written as a palindrome, so I had to look this up to
Yes.
check what this was. So the words, there's not many of them, that they go forwards and then they go backwards.
Right,
It's
so
like
you
a
can
mirror
read
image.
it. Yeah.
So it is beautifully drawn.
Oh my god, this is what I always think of picture books. Like some of their art, I want it on my wall,
Absolutely.
and this is one of them.
And although it is a picture book,
It seems like a comic graphic novel. kind
it's
of
like
thing.
one of these things that we seem to be getting a lot in just now, where they're kind of vague. You're not quite sure where they fit in, and that's good. I mean, right at the beginning it says ages 4 to 8. Now that's not picture book readers as such. Do you know what I mean? But I think you could tell a story to a small one,
Yeah.
and make up your own kind of story around it.
Yeah.
But if there was grief in your family,
Yeah.
I think it's a nice book to give to somebody maybe slightly older to kind of read through.
Yeah.
So basically, the premise is the wee boy's upset because basically they're never going to get this meal that mum used to make all the time because dad's not quite sure how to make it, etc., etc. So he storms out the house and just look at the pictures; they're just beautiful.
And it's like, it feels like old-timey fantasy.
Yeah.
That's what that sort of landscape,
No,
the
absolutely.
pictures.
And I don't know, from like the kind of very first picture, it kind of looks like an island or some kind of it's not quite.
And like a cottage
Yeah.
outside, yeah.
So our wee boy, and as I say, I know that you'll read this afterwards, Pari, but basically he goes into this forest. There's very, very few words, but the pictures absolutely make up for it.
And see that I knew it was a fantasy thing because there are these glowing spiders.
Glowing spiders, yep. And although there's not a lot of words, this page there is no words on it, apart from like noise words. But you can absolutely see what's happening here.
Yeah, but it invites you to pay attention because
Absolutely.
you're reading the words. You're like, you have to follow the order, and there's so many details. That's what I love about graphic novels.
And it's just absolutely beautiful. So he gets kind of lost. He gets lost where he's going. He ends up somewhere else.
And it is like, this does look like different kinds of fantastical kingdoms.
Yep. And then he comes across a statue that looks very much like his mum, which we've seen in a picture at the beginning. And he kind of cuts the mum free of all the thorns and things like that. And basically you realise that he's not upset about the food or anything like that. He's actually upset because it appears that he's not had the chance to say goodbye to his mum, if you see what I mean. And you'll see around here, there's beautiful pictures of things that have happened to him, growing up with his mum. And I'm not going to spoil it for the the listeners, but you can see here he does get his answer, and then he travels back home, which is when the story goes backwards again. So he goes through the landscapes that he came through to get there, and realises the things that were scary are not so scary. Absolutely beautiful. He also finds some of the ingredients to the food.
That's such a cleverly structured book, though.
Absolutely.
So it's not just the illustrations, but the concept of it is.
It's almost like he's on, like, for such a small book, you can absolutely tell the boy is on a journey. And to begin with, it's very scary. He's going through this forest. It's very scary. He's, worried about things. And then he kind of gets the answer he was looking for and realises the scary things are not as scary as he thought. So he goes back through, absolutely beautiful. does what he needs to do.
I'm not paying a lot of attention
No,
to
I
it
know.
because I'm gonna actually break my project already because I have to read this book.
You read it in here though, so
That's
technically
true.
that doesn't count.
That's true.
It's not
It's
one
a
that
part
you're
of
gonna take.
work.
Yes. But it is just beautifully illustrated. It's such a clever idea, and I did have to look it up because I wasn't sure at first what it meant. And then when I read the words and then I read them and I was like, oh right, okay, I understand now. It's basically, taking you through and then going backwards and showing you it's not what you thought it meant, kind of thing. Absolutely beautiful book.
Just stunning. And this does seem like, from what you've shown me, it seems like a graphic novel for younger kids.
Yes.
So like you said, it's not quite picture bookish and it's not quite graphic novelish, but I think it would be really rewarding for younger kids to read with grown-ups, but also older kids to read just by themselves, both those who've gone through grief, but also just who've not, but maybe want to sort of know about.
Investigate it. I think it's one of those ones as well, because there's not a lot of words, but the pictures are so stunning. It doesn't have to be a book about grief. It doesn't have to be a book about anything like that.
No, it can just be about a boy on an adventure.
If you were reading it to kids, the pictures give you kind of guide to what you could say. It could just be that he is battling through this forest,
and the kids could read something in it that the parents or the adults might not have noticed.
Absolutely. I can imagine we people kind of pointing things out that you've absolutely not noticed before, because there's so much in the pictures, and it's just a wonderful book. And because we were doing natural world and he goes to all these different places, I thought that'll fit in.
I think visual literacy is such a skill as well, that in picture books, you tend to focus on the words. And then when you grow up, fewer and fewer pictures anyway, even though as adults, we love pictures too. But I think there's a whole bunch of research around it as well. But even just the kids figuring out, making the connection between the words and the pictures, but also just reading the pictures and connecting it to their own lives, or learning to just read the pictures, because that's easier than learning to read the words. There's so much going on, but it's all just in 32 pages or whatever it is. So I'm so
also,
happy.
I've kept it hidden for the last 2 weeks because I know that if you had seen it, you would have looked at it and it would have spoiled it.
For sure. I'm pretty sure I think I've put it on a list somewhere because I did want more graphic novels into our library for younger kids, and that sounds like, this book looks familiar. Where did it come from?
Well, as I say, you're allowed to read it in work, so you'll be fine.
But excellent choices there.
Thank you.
Well, I think we've satisfied Brie with all our natural worldishness. What about next time?
Well, as usual, Brie has just thrown something in there just in a random way. And our next challenge is shopping.
Oh, and also did you use the word harangue?
No, but I wish I had now.
I think you did in my head, because what a fantastic word. I am harangued by the idea of shopping. Okay, I must say that's left me flummoxed. Another word that I like.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see what we come up with for next time.
We shall. Very puzzled. Goodbye.
Bye.